This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Radio stations of frequency, vibrational.
I was a homicide detective with LAPD.
UFOs increase. Visitations. You ready to dive deep into the unknown and explore the mysteries of our universe? Today we are thrilled to have a very special guest, Whitley Strieber, an acclaimed author and prominent figure in the world of the unexplained phenomena. In this episode, we're going to discuss his groundbreaking book called Them, which delves into the often misunderstood world of the unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAPs, commonly referred to as UFOs. Them is not just another book about UFO sightings, it's a comprehensive analysis that brings the light that experiences of both civilians and military personnel who had close encounters with these baffling phenomenon. As he does, Whitley challenges the conventional narratives and skeptical views that have long dominated the field of ufology. And as we unravel the mysteries with Whitley, we'll explore the intricate details of these encounters. And if you can't get enough of Whitley today, don't forget to buy your tickets for Conscious Life Expo coming up February 9th through the 12th. He's going to be speaking, and I know you won't want to miss it and seeing him in person. Well, let's get this started. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, the one and only Whitley Strieber. Hello, hello. I am thrilled. It's been a long time, and it's always an honor to have, I would say, and I don't use this lightly, a legend in our genre of the ufology, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's a little scary to be a legend. They have a tendency to die out, but I'm pretty healthy, so I'm not expecting to. I'm expecting to stay a legend for a while, but thank you.
Well, you're very welcome and well-deserved. And for the people that are joining us in the YouTube channel, please, if you have questions for Whitley, we're going to probably ask him about 20-25 minutes in. So please get your questions ready. If not, we're going to get started. And Whitley, I mean, you could fill a library of your books, of the books that you have written. And
I've done that, actually. It's in the other room.
I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm curious with this book, what makes it different from your previous writings and work that you've done?
Most of my writing on this subject has been about personal experience, my experiences, and which have been going on now for quite a few years. And this book is not about that. My experiences don't figure in it very much. They're referenced once or twice. It's primarily about the close encounter experience itself as it is happening to both members of the public and the military. And then it ends with a brief part about the brain and the nature of perception.
Right.
But the first part of the book covers 11 letters that we received that are now among the many thousands of letters that are archived at Rice University in Houston, and analyzes each one of them very deeply. And the second part of the book goes through the military experience and how it evolved from the late 40s to the present time, and the struggle that has gone on behind the scenes to understand and deal with what is present here. And I wouldn't say it's been very successful, this attempt, but it is, and I'm hoping that the book will shed some light on what needs to be done to change that, of course.
No, of course, and I think it will. And for some people that may know you of just recent, that many of your personal experiences and transformations, depicted in like the Communion and your later works, has it influenced this book, Them, and how has it influenced, like you said, it's not necessarily your personal experiences, but how has it influenced this work?
My personal life with the visitors has enabled me to do analysis of this experience in ways that would not be possible if I didn't have that.
Right.
My entire vision of this is animated by my relationship with them. And this, I can't imagine that I could write the way I write about them or analyze this material as deeply as I do without them.
And I mean, just following your work, unfortunately I was a teenager, in the 80s, but I did, when I started reading your work, just to see your evolution on the way you write and your explanation it just keeps getting better and better. And it's like, how does Whitley continue to give us knowledge that we feel like we've never heard before? And where do you feel that inspiration comes from when you write your books?
It comes from the fact that there's an ongoing relationship. In other words, I'm involved with them, and I communicate quite frequently with them in numerous different ways, and it's real. It's not something hypothetical. It's quite real, and I am not a channeler, and I also don't take anything that's said to me at face value, because if you do that with these people, you make a grave mistake.
Right.
If you want to slavishly follow them, then they will take you down the wrong path every time. So you have to really. I always say to people who are getting into contact with them, well, fine, listen to what they have to say and how they what they communicate to you, but you cut the cards. It's your experience and your life. And if they tell you one thing, like, for example, one of the first things that we ever heard from them was something that General Twining heard in 1946. One of them, who had been still alive when brought from Roswell, it communicated to him telepathically, according to the general's son, that they had no interest in human beings. In other words, the first thing we ever heard from them was a lie. And that needs to be remembered carefully, because this isn't something that, it wasn't that they were trying to deceive us at all, but you have to understand it a different way. It's a challenge. In other words, that from their standpoint, from our standpoint, he lied and he tried to deceive us. From their standpoint, he said, can you look a little deeper? I challenge you to look deeper, because that obviously can't be true. Wow. It's a different way of thinking. And until you've understood that, you get all kinds of crazy stuff. They'll tell you anything, any nutty thing. And if you believe it, then they go on to the next person, basically. So that's how it works. It's very hard they're hard to work with.
I'm sure.
Really rewarding. Really rewarding.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm curious on your viewpoint of that, traditional ufology, and, as we've seen with Ancient Aliens and so many programs and speakers now that kind of brought ufology into the modern 21st century, and a little more openness about it, but there's still skepticism. And I'm curious on your if you can explain the traditional ufology outright skepticism failed to adequately explain UAPs, which is the new terminology. It used to be just UFOs, but now it's the UAP phenomenon. How do you explain that?
first of all, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is less threatening than unidentified flying object.
Right.
And I think that's the real reason for the change. And then I don't really think about what you call traditional ufology. I guess it exists. I'm not quite sure what it is. I know a lot of people who work on this, but I'm not. I don't know many people who are like in MUFON and stuff, who sort of do ufology cases and stuff. I'm very fixated on the relationship with the visitors and my own and that of other people who are in the same situation. Because, you know, there are people out there who've had many, many difficult experiences with
Yeah.
this. You know, I mean, I've had, and it usually goes directly to your sexual content. And you know, I know women who've had 5 fetuses or 6 fetuses disappear. I know men who've had semen taken from them, and I have had that happen too, and have seen a child 11 years later who was not of this world, and so disturbed that I drove him off and out of my life, and he was probably my son.
Wow.
And you know, this is a reality, and the nuts and bolts people are fine. They're going down that road, and a lot of people on the inside in the government are very hesitant to engage with the experiencer group because they don't want to deal with it, and they also don't want to, especially the people in the military, do not want to have to say, well, we couldn't do anything about this.
Right.
They don't want to. They just want to ignore this. I sent them to every single member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Not one person even sent, no, I take it back. One person, one senator, I don't even remember which one, sent back a form letter.
None.
And the others didn't even do that. And that's remarkable because you always get a form letter when you send something to a politician.
Right.
They didn't even do that. That's how far on the outside experiencers are. And I know that some of those senators know very well what our story is. So on that committee, I could name names, so I'm not going to do that because I just don't want to. I don't want to point fingers yet.
Right.
But I was at the Soul Foundation conference, which is a big conference with the first time a lot of people from the sciences, the intellectual community, the intelligence community, and the military had all gathered together to talk about this subject. There was an elephant lumbering around in the back of the room. That was me, the experiencer, and those who I represent. I was not allowed to speak. I was not given an invitation to speak. And I understood why not. I mean, I like Gary Nolan. He's a good friend. And I understood why not. The reason was that a lot of people in that audience would not have been comfortable hearing from an experiencer. So that's where we are. And as far as the sort of ufological group is concerned, they do a lot of good research, superb research. A lot of it is absolutely amazing, top drawer research done often under the most negative, difficult circumstances possible, without adequate support at any level, and yet they come through time and again. It's an extraordinary, the body of work that has been produced by conventional ufology
Right.
is extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. The fact that they don't want to deal with the experiencer phenomenon is perfectly understandable to me. I probably wouldn't either, but I'm in it. I'm in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I find fascinating is when you're putting the research together, I mean, you've experienced, so there is no, disregarding what you went through and what you've experienced, or especially over the years. But when you're putting this book together, and the book is called Them, and I'm curious on how you authenticated many of these accounts before you featured them in your book. So how do you the process of authenticating each experience in your research?
One of the things you can't do, because we don't have the equipment to do it,
Right.
in dealing with the close encounter experience, is to go and try to show that what is being reported is actually physically what happened.
Right.
That's not possible. It may be possible in the future, and I do have some ideas about how that would come about, but it's not possible now. Therefore, you have to do something else. And the first thing I did was I confined it pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, to letters where there was more than one witness or there was an ancillary event that supported the experience or the claims in the experience. In other words, some indication that something had happened. In the cases where it was only an individual's report, I chose letters from people I knew and had talked to personally. And that's about the best you can do. I'm pretty sure that there's nothing in the group of letters that's simply a confabulation sent
Right.
by a crazy person or someone looking for attention or something like that. And if you go to Rice and you go and look through the letters, you find that is there maybe, but not much. Mostly it's just people who either saw the cover of Communion or read the book or both, writing and saying, my God, that happened to me, but this is what happened. And it is not the same story told over and over again. It is very clear that one of the things this isn't is scientists like us who look different coming to Earth and examining the human species. That's not what it is. They may be scientists not from Earth who don't look like us, but their way of examining the human species is nothing like what we would do if the roles were reversed.
Well, and that's fascinating because you've talked about this in your book, suggesting that extraterrestrial beings might be infiltrating our personal space to better understand humanity. But what does that mean? Our personal space. I that was my key word when I saw that. What does mean infiltrating our personal space?
Infiltrating our personal space can mean a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
It can mean finding out that somebody else can engage with you inside your mind.
Oh.
And this is something that happens to many, many close encounter witnesses, and is, I think, the reason too many of them have become emotionally disturbed, because they can't handle it. And it can be organized, actually, in the sense that there's a time of day at 3 o'clock in the morning, about that time, it varies, which in ancient Indian wisdom, in one of the yogas, is called Brahma Muhurta time. That is to say, the time of the most open mind, the time of learning. And if you, as I was taught, if you do a meditation, a certain simple meditation that opens the mind at that hour between the 3 and 4, they will engage with your mind, and it can be very productive. Every book I've written, from Afterlife Investigation, Afterlife Revolution, through them, and including the book I'm writing now, has involved this process. And the book A New World there was an absolutely direct process where I worked at a very secluded country house, and they would physically show up.
Wow.
Not come into the house, but I would sit in the living room, and they would be on the porch a few feet away from me, and we would communicate mentally in writing the book. So that is real. It's
Mm-hmm.
real. It's not a dream. And I'm sure that if people discipline themselves very, very seriously, you can't expect channeling, and you must not take their word at face value, or
Yeah.
they will chew you up and spit you out. You can get somewhere with that. You can communicate and you can engage.
And I find that fascinating because, in the paranormal genre of in the ghost and spirits, that is the witching hour, and they talk about how the layer is thinnest at 3 a.m. So I find that fascinating that both UAPs or aliens or extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, it use the same tactic or the same hour. That's fascinating.
One day when my wife was working on the letters, and Anne was the one who read all of the letters.
Hmm.
When they started to come in, the postman would come and just take bags of mail and pile them on our living room floor. And I was appalled because we didn't expect the scale of this. And and yet all of these letters had return addresses on them, and the ones I opened had very personal material in them. You couldn't just throw these letters out.
Yeah.
And I said to Anne, what are we going to do with these letters? And she said, but we're going to read them. I said, we can't read these. That's too many letters. And she said, well, you might not be able to, but I can. And she did. She read them all.
Good for
and
her.
Over the next few years, she hired a secretary, and she read all the letters, and they made this file that's now at Rice. But one day she came out of her office and she said something terribly important. And this is one of the places where I depart from the conventional ufologists, but that's okay. We're not here to make decisions about what this is.
Right.
We're here to figure out what the good questions are. So she said, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death. And that is why when you deal with this, you soon find yourself dealing with and engaged with both what appear to be non-human beings and the dead, your own dead. This happens. It happens routinely. It's part of the experience.
Right.
And we live in a culture which doesn't believe that there is a life after death. It doesn't believe in the soul. And, people are trying to be, when you say ufology and someone's trying to be scientific in ufology, it's just laughable. I mean, most scientists just think, what a bunch of nuts.
Right.
They might be, sure, they might have PhDs and doctorates and whatnot, but they're studying flying saucers, for God's sakes. Give them a propeller beanie and send them home. And that's still the attitude, believe me, in many scientific circles. And then these guys and women have to go out there and say, well, not only is it spaceships from another planet, but it's ghosts and the witching hour and the dead, and come on, and souls, and they just can't go there, not yet.
Right.
But they will. We're all going there.
Yeah.
One of the things that's happening right now in the Western world is the rediscovery of the soul, not in the context of old mythology, but as an objective part of reality.
I've always said when my grandfather, before I was born, he had a near-death experience. He didn't really, back then, they didn't have all the books and the conversations and talking. He was a small country town guy, and he saw the light, went through the tunnel, went out, saw his mother cross the river and says, it's not your time. You need to go back. He went back. Another 12 years he lived. Someone like that who worked in the church and owned a business and all that stuff, it did make him believe that is something. And we're not talking about the religious part of it. We're talking about something bigger than just the religious part of it. So, yeah, it's fascinating to, like you said, that people to this day still don't believe there's something greater beyond. Even Betty White said, "Once we go, we know the secret."
Yeah, but the thing is that they're trying to become a respectable part of science. So how can they possibly bring this aspect of it in at the same time? They can't.
Yeah.
So the result is that there's a split between the experiencer community and the conventional ufological community, right? And that's part of the reason for the split.
I totally agree on that. And for people just tuning in, hey, we have the one and only Whitley Strieber on the show talking about his latest accomplishment, and one of these groundbreaking books is called Them. And I find the title very fascinating, and we're going to take some questions from our my co-host in the chat room. But where did the title Them? Because nowadays, there's a he, she, they, them. I thought it was very funny that you use them as the title. So how did you choose the title?
Well, my background is as a horror novelist and writer, and I've had some great films made from my novels.
You have.
And one of my absolute favorite horror films is the film Them. And I found quotes throughout the script that fit the book perfectly. Only I couldn't get permission to use the quotes. I couldn't get any response from the studio that was involved. I forget which one it was. And so I couldn't use the quotes. But they're charming quotes that sort of amplify the mystery. And there's even a quote where one of the officials in as the giant ants are coming out and beginning to head for, guess where? Los Angeles, of course.
Right. Of course.
The traditional recipient of all the great sort of geologic and types of horror that we have in the movies anyway. And he says, this all has to be kept from the public, has to be kept secret until we know what's going on and we've gotten in control of it. And I thought, it's a perfect quote, because that's actually the case in the real world. And I thought that it was just a good fit. And I love the word title. Then.
I love it. No.
Yeah.
I think it, like you said, it's a great fit, and the three beings are just pretty amazing, and I think it just kind of goes together.
That's Ashley Galore, the brilliant illustrator, graphic artist that I have, and what she did was she created those three beings out of our discussions. But I think the most important thing she did to the cover is a very small but a very cool one. She put the period after them.
Huh. Oh, I just now noticed that. Yeah.
That makes all the difference in the world.
It does. Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, Whitley, do you mind taking a few questions from the chat room?
Absolutely not. I'll be glad to.
All right. So we have Biz Wolfer, says, do you think that they are able to perceive the future and know future events before us? And if so, are they guiding humanity in a certain direction? What is your belief on that?
Well, my first answer to that is, if they're guiding humanity, they are no damn good at it.
Right.
So they need to go back to the drawing board on that one. Second, do they have a sense of the future that's more developed than ours? Well, that's possible. And the reason it's possible is it relates to something called the block universe theory. The block universe theory is a theory, and it's a theory in physics, or in astrophysics, I should say, that suggests that the universe may be a kind of a fixed entity that is already there from beginning to end. And consciousness is moving through it like a kind of wave. And nothing new can happen, but what since we don't know the future, our expectations are what give our experience energy in our lives, a meaning. It's an interesting theory. I wouldn't argue it is for it, but if it's true or something close to it or like it is true, and these entities are so richly informed about the way reality works, that is quite clear, then yeah, I would say it's very possible that they do know more of the future than we do.
That's a great answer, and I hope and everybody's saying good question. So, and I'm sure that
It was a good question. Yeah,
so, all right, we have Kevin also says, and I love that your title is them. So, but his is why do they, in quotes, threaten and silence experiencers so much?
I don't think they threaten and silence experience. The visitors don't.
It must be.
They don't care what we do or say.
Yeah.
They're just going to do their thing, and but they don't treat us necessarily with the kind of respect we might treat each other, and very far from it, in fact. So I don't think that they're silencing us. I think that the culture silences us because you're out there. You go out there and you try to talk about this subject. I can tell you from a considerable amount of personal experience, it isn't easy. You're going to be tuned out. Like, I used to publish my books with, and it's gotten worse over the years, not better. In fact, the closer this comes to a real thing, the more people see things like the government admitting that UAPs are something unknown, the more the experiencer community is tuned out. And that's by the intellectuals. And that's because the scientists, academics, and other intellectuals cannot handle the idea that there is someone above them, in higher than them, in terms of understanding the world, who won't deal with them. And they look at the experiencers and they see these people who are not of their caliber in terms of their intellectual content and their degrees and so forth. And they think to themselves, well, these people can't do this. And is that they're offended by it. And I don't blame them. I would be too. And they're frightened by the idea that there could be somebody else higher up who won't talk to them.
Yeah.
I knew Rusty Schweikert, who was an inveterate skeptic and denier. He hated the whole idea of this. And he's also a good guy. I mean, I'm not a person who has emotional trouble with people who don't agree with me at all. I grew up in a political family, and you learn from an early age, if your house is full of politicians, that people who don't agree with each other can still be friends.
Right.
So Rusty said to me once, he said, Whitley, the thing and I didn't know him well. I hasten to add, I just met him a couple times at the World Affairs Conference at the University of Colorado. So it's not exactly a friendship. It's just a brief acquaintanceship. I want to be clear about that. But he said, what I hate about this is the idea that the path to Mars may be well worn. In other words, how disempowering it is, or would be, if it ends up that we're going out there looking around and discovering things that others have known for years and years, that nothing is actually new except our discovery.
Right, right.
That's going to be hard to face.
It
It's
is.
probably true.
Yeah, one of the questions I saw earlier, somebody asked, and it kind of brought me back to Captain Kirk traveling. William Shatner being able at 91 going into space for the first time, and if you ever had that opportunity to go into space, or even saying, "Hey, would you like to go to Mars or go to the moon?" What would you ever want to experience that?
I'm not interested in going to Mars,
I wouldn't either.
Venus. Neither one of them look like the kind of places that someone like me would like to be.
Right.
In that I'm a human being.
Right.
I'm not sure that, we're very connected to the Earth, and we're very dense, full of fluid. I'm not sure our destiny is so much to fly around in outer space, not in this form. This may not be our only form, though. There's a lot of things about the human mind and its abilities that we don't yet understand. And I'm not at all sure that if they come from the same physical universe that we do,
Right.
that they fly here in some way that we would understand. I'm not at all sure of that. I think they may come in some very different way, and they may not. And if wormholes in the physical universe are possible, and if you actually get into the physics of that, they seem to be impossible. But if that's not true, if they are possible, and these people are coming through them, they could be literally walking out of their living room into yours,
Right.
across 10,000 or 1,000,000 light years.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even know it. But what would that do to your mind if you suddenly had the ability to go anywhere? And I'll tell you what it might do to your mind. I used to walk out in the woods at night after I figured out this was real and that they were really something very strange. I thought to myself, well, they really beat the hell out of you. And what are you going to do about it? So I bought shotguns, and there's an all long story about all my guns. Then I thought, but they're damn real. This is real. And I said to Ann, let's go out in the woods at night and see if we can get them to come back. She said, great idea. Go right ahead. I have a 16-year-old boy in my life. I'm staying here.
She's like, I'm sitting right here watching TV and having me a cup of tea.
Exactly. And so I did. And I would go out many times. And I went out. There was one of them that I'm pretty sure I never had a direct face-to-face contact. I want to be very clear about that. I really want to be, I want to be as accurate as I can. But there was a place, one of them, I'm pretty sure would stand near the path I was on. And finally I sat down in that place. There were some logs there, or near it rather. It wasn't right exactly where it was. And I put myself into a meditative state. And I said, I know you're here. I know you're in those bushes. And I'm not trying to get you to come out. That's why I sat down. I'm not going to jump at you. I don't know why they're so shy, but they are. And I learned to respect that if I was going to have any relationship with them.
Right.
And I want you to tell me what the universe means to you. And they would reply often in images, very vivid visual images, not all of which I could understand. This I could understand really clearly. It was like I had my eyes closed just like this, and there appeared in my mind an image of a coffin. What does the universe mean to you? A coffin?
Interesting.
If you can go to the ends of the universe, or if it is infinite, either one, you're going to be incredibly claustrophobic. And if you already know the contents of time, you're going to feel like a machine running down a track that you can't get off of.
Wow.
No wonder I got that image. And then I thought, they like to enter me. They like to share my mind. I knew that, and I did that with them many times. I do it all the time now. I did it 3 o'clock this morning, in fact. No, yesterday morning. And I think when they're in us and sharing in communion with us, they also experience the world as always new. Because for you and me and everybody out there, every second is new. We are never ahead of ourselves in time. We're never trapped in infinity. And I think they might be. And I think that might be one of the reasons they're here. And one of the reasons that genius on the wall behind me, Ann Strieber, said that we should call the book Communion, because it was about more than contact.
Oh, that's great.
She knew from the beginning what was really going on. She was an amazing human being.
Sounds like she had a lot of knowledge in her being.
Boy, I wish I knew where she came from.
Right.
Right. I mean, I know her life. She grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, went to South Lyon High School, talked to some of the people who knew her, and she was frankly just a very ordinary girl. She was nothing special. No one thought of anything special. She was a nice kid, you know.
Right.
That's all. Then when we met, the first thing that started to happen is all kinds of paranormal experiences started. This is long before Community. This is 1969, 1970.
Wow.
And, we would laugh it off. I mean, we were a couple of kids madly in love, and basically that was what we were interested in. We weren't interested in the fact that there were all kinds of weird things happening around us. But something clicked on another level when we got together.
Wow.
And she just became a genius of contact, is what she became.
It's like fitting a perfect glove. So I love hearing that, and I'm glad you had that experience. I'm glad you had that experience. I know time is running out, but I have 2 more questions. One from somebody in the chat room, and I'm going to kind of add on to that. Let's see. Sherry said, "Is there a particular experience that stands out in your mind that was profound?" But I'm gonna say that Whitley has been very open about his experiences. But what I want to add on to that are there any experiences that you've kept for yourself? Not necessarily to hide it, but just it was so cherished, or something that you kept just for yourself.
No, I'm very specific about this.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about this a lot, and my job is not to keep things for myself private. As far as this experience is concerned, I don't have any privacy, and I would never hide a big experience. What I keep to myself are the fragmentary ones. And there's lots of little fragments here and there that I can't really find a place for.
Right.
And they kind of come in and out of memory too. So I probably ought to make a list of them before I kick the bucket. But they don't seem mostly too important. But I will tell you, I have big experiences all the time. This is not something that but looking back, there are some. There was one in particular there was one a couple of nights ago, but there was one in particular that I've talked about before. I've never talked about the one a couple of nights ago, and I'm not ready to do that now. I will eventually when I've really got it sorted out in my head. But this one happened in February, I believe, of 1988. It was a snowy morning. I had been asking them to come and have a conversation with me. I'd had a bench built out in the woods, and I imagined that we would sit together on the bench and have a chat. I just thought that, I've got to somehow ground this in my reality. All of a sudden, like just before dawn, it was just sort of getting to be dawn, I heard like a mournful trumpet blow, and it woke me up. And it was a very unusual sound in this country house in the morning, and I thought, that's so strange. It has to be them. So I put my shoes on, my slippers on. I grabbed my robe and threw it around me. It was cold, and went outside. I went up across our deck, which had a little pool, and then up a little hill, and there was the naked woods and the place that they had landed before behind it. And I could see a dark form, a dark shape in that behind the woods, beyond the woods in the little clearing, and these figures standing near it. And I stopped because it was shocking. I was actually, this was real. This was a physical reality. And I took, as soon as I stopped, this terrible voice came in my head going, come on, come on. And scared the living
I'm sure it would. Me too.
I thought to me, God damn, if I go down there, am I going to be eaten or taken and never come back? Is Anne going to end up with a little boy to raise and no insurance money because it's going to take 7 years if I just disappear for her to get the money? I can't do that. I don't have the right to do that to her. I don't have the right. So I turned around, and also I was scared out of my wits by the tone of that voice.
Right.
I turn around, I go back to the house. When I put my hand on the door handle, I hear above the woods 3 cries. Oh, oh, oh. Deeply emotional, deeply sad, perfectly spaced, like the most emotionally rich, competent machine you could ever imagine. And hear the contradiction in that, because it's there. I go on in the house. I sit on the bedside. I am aware of the fact that there is something else in the house. We were used at that time to being aware of these invisible presences because our cats had taught us how. The cats would see them when we didn't. And we learned how it felt when they were in the house, and that's how it felt.
Wow, that's amazing.
So the next thing I know, I'm not in my bedroom anymore. There are these tall, sort of tapered wooden things all around me. Then I realize, I look up and I see a desk that I thought, my God, it's my mama's desk. I'm back to my babyhood.
Oh, wow.
And I'm kind of gliding along. And I realize, it hits me. They've taken me back to the moment when I first walked. Here's the message. Okay, Whitley, you're still a baby, but you took your first step. I think we could end on that.
Wow. That's a good book title. You're still a baby. Take your first step. I love that. Wow, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we unfortunately we're going to have to get out of here. But for people that want to see Whitley in person, coming up at the Conscious Life Expo, he's going to be here in Los Angeles Sunday, February 11th at 2 to 3:30 p.m. In the Carmel Room. You can get your tickets in advance. Save that $10. That way you don't have to pay the full $60 at the door. So go to consciouslifeexpo.com. And on our way out, what do you envision the future of humanity with the interactions with these aliens, and how do you think it's going to impact our society?
As the planet becomes less and less able to support large numbers of human beings and begins to fail in ways that everybody can recognize, they will become more apparent. I don't think there's any plan that I know of for them to save us at the last minute. It's not like the cavalry coming.
Right.
But we will become aware of ourselves in a different way that has a lot to do with Anne Strieber's original comment. This has something to do with what we call death. We will end up in a situation where there is no veil between the worlds.
I mean, it happens to everyone. I mean, a lot of people on their deathbeds, an accident, they're on their way out. That's when they start really reflecting on really what matters in their lifetime.
Happen to us en masse.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's where our planet is going. So, well, Whitley, thank you so much for being such a leader in this ufology revolution and creating another masterpiece called Them. And people can go to Amazon or pretty much anywhere you can find a book. But
it's also available as an audiobook, and I read it myself.
Did you? See, that even makes it even better. I was going to ask you about that because I didn't get the audio version, but I'm such an ADD person. That's probably how I should do it. So, but thank you so much for being part of Truth Be Told again. I hope to see you here in Conscious Life.
Thank you very much.
You got it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday, participating in the chat room, giving some amazing questions for Whitley. We really appreciate that. Please share the show, leave a comment, like this, and please come back every Friday. I have some great guests coming up before Conscious Life and even after. So, on Mondays, make sure you tune in for Robert Hensley that does the Minutemen reports, and then Bonnie Burkett. She does Truth Be Told Transformation. If you like the meditations and spirituality side of the paranormal genre, you will love that show. So, but until next time, thank you all, and we'll see you on the other side. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.